All right. Morning, everybody. Today we are in John chapter 3, and we're getting close to the end of this chapter. We're going to be starting in verse 22, right after this conversation with Nicodemus, and between Nicodemus and Jesus. It says, let me pray real quick. Heavenly Father, thank you for the opportunity to do these videos and have the time to dig into your word and the beautiful sun outside. Thank you for the dramatic change in weather from what seems like a few weeks ago being cold and, almost wondering if snow's gonna fall again to, wow, we just skipped spring and jumped straight into the middle of summer. I literally got sunburn on my arm the other day just by driving around. What else was I gonna say? Oh yeah, help me stay humble and teach your word, preach your word, rightly, accurately, and in an understanding manner, so that it reaches the heart of whoever hears it. In Jesus' mighty name, amen. Okay, so verse 22. So after this conversation, Jesus and his disciples went into the Judean countryside, and he remained there with them and was baptizing. So now, like how John was dunking people, now Jesus is dunking people as well. John was also baptizing at Aenon. It's Aenon. I wonder how you pronounce that. How do you pronounce that? Anon.
Strong's G137.
Ainon. Okay. Was at Ainon near Salim, because water was plentiful there, and people were coming and being baptized. For John had not yet been put into prison. Spoiler alert, he's going to prison later. Now a discussion arose between some of John's disciples and between John's disciples and a Jew over purification. People gotta get into a squabble. They came to John and said to him, Rabbi. Now remember, rabbi basically just means teacher or mentor. It's like they're all a bunch of Robins and this is their Batman. They've chosen to follow him, and they want to be as much like him as they can to do the job when he's gone. Rabbi, he who was with you across the Jordan, to whom you bore witness, look, he is baptizing, and all are going to him. They fall into this comparison struggle. You know, they don't quite seem to grasp it yet. They're literally sitting there the whole time that John's been preaching about this guy that he's bearing witness to. He's announcing the coming of this individual, this Messiah, and now he's here. And so their whole ministry, all their people, all their gathering, their following, are going over to him now. And they think, well, we need to do something about this. what can we do about this, John? All our people are leaving and going over to his team. And John answered, a person cannot receive even one thing unless it is given him from heaven. You yourselves bear witness that I said, I am not the Christ, but I have been sent before him, or ahead of him in other translations. The one who has the bride is the bridegroom. The friend of the bridegroom who stands near him rejoices greatly at the bridegroom's voice. Therefore, this joy of mine is now complete. He must increase, but I must decrease. There's a lot there. In verse 27, when John answers, a person cannot receive even one thing unless it is given him from heaven, he's basically saying, look, if so, I've come here to bring attention to him, and now that the attention is going to him, you're complaining? This is a good thing. This is literally the mission. Don't compare yourself to Jesus. Don't compare our ministry to Jesus. Our ministry is built to bring people to Jesus. I mean, that's the whole deal with the church. Is like, if you go to church and you're there for just the music, or just the pastor, or just the people, or just the food potluck at the end, or something like that, you're missing the point. You need to be there to get closer to Jesus. Now, yes, the music can be wonderful. Yes, the pastor can be, a mighty preacher, you know, but he didn't get any of that. You don't get any of that music from people who aren't dedicated to doing it for the glory of God. You don't get that wonderful food that people have baked or cooked or bought or brought in any other way without them wanting to do so to glorify Jesus. You don't even enjoy the people and the social aspect of it without without the essential goal, I guess, of glorification of Jesus. He says, or I think it was actually Paul who said, do not forsake the gathering of the saints. Well, we are all the saints, and there's a reason we should not forsake it, because when community comes together, we glorify our God. He created man to be social, so let's be social. There's, you know, if someone who built a car said, hey, this is the gas pedal to go, you want to go, you need to press the gas, and you're over here pushing the brake, and you're like, I don't know why I'm not going. And a lot of people show up to church, they sit there for the sermon, they check that off their list, I'm a Christian, and then they bounce and go home before anybody can talk to them. And I admit, I'm the same way. I do that more times than I'd like to admit, to be honest. Now, sometimes I actually have things I have to go and do, you know, but like I got dogs, sometimes I gotta, let them out, whatever else like that. But a lot of times it's just an excuse because I don't really feel like being social. But maybe someone might need just someone to listen to them that day. Maybe someone might need advice that day on a topic that you actually know and understand. Or maybe someone over there just needs to feel like they might have an opportunity to have a friend, and you could be that friend, and you don't even know how much, you know, of a wonderful relationship that would be if you didn't step out in faith and say, you know what, I must decrease, he must increase. I'm going to do his will more so than my own, and I'm going to go out there, put myself out there and talk to these people, or at least put myself into the situation, into the atmosphere where a conversation could naturally occur. It might be uncomfortable, it might not be something you want to do, but after the fact, you might walk away and be like, wow, I'm glad I stayed. And God will be like, oh, interesting. You know? So the glorification of God versus the fulfillment of my own satisfaction is the goal. I don't know if I said that right. The glorification of God is the goal, not the satisfaction of myself. And I should not ever be comparing myself to Jesus. Now, us as people, we really like ourselves. We act like we don't, and we can get it drilled into our head that, oh, I hate this about myself, or that about myself, or whatever else like that. That's Satan talking in your ear, disguising his voice as your own internal monologue, and because you think it, you believe it, and then it becomes something you believe, and that's really hard to fight. I deal with that day in and day out, so I get it. But if you're sitting here and you're comparing yourself to literally Jesus, like these disciples are doing, there is no comparison. That's like looking at Superman over there flying around and being like, oh gosh, people are looking at him because he can fly. I can, I can, you know, run. I don't know. He's not that impressive. Like, what are you doing? It's the same thing that we do when we compare ourselves to other people as well. You know, I sit here and look at the Instagram or Facebook or whatever else like that, and I'm seeing all these people's A-roll. You know, the wonderful beach that they're at, the beautiful sunset. You know, this beautiful proposal going on, or someone's business becoming successful, and I don't have a business. I proposed over a French fry. This, that, and the other thing. And I compare myself to these other people, but I'm comparing my B roll to these other people's A roll. Instagram is a liar. You know, you get yourself into all this comparison and trouble. You know, when you compare yourself to someone else, you're looking at God and looking at what He gave you, because He literally just says that. Where did it go? Oh yeah, a person cannot receive even one thing unless it is given from heaven. So when you compare yourself, you're looking at God and saying, God, you got it wrong. You didn't give me enough and you gave them too much. Fix it. How arrogant and prideful do you got to be to tell God that He got it wrong? What John is telling us in verse 27 is, you don't have it because God hasn't given it to you. He's also saying you cannot obtain or take by your own power what God has not given you. And one thing one of my favorite preachers says is that the opposite is true as well. By definition, if you can't have anything that God has not given you, then by definition, you also cannot be kept from what God has for you. If God intends to give this to you, then nothing is going to stop it from happening. If God intends you to be a parent, you're going to be. If God intends you to get that promotion, you're going to get that promotion. Now, there are steps people need to take, you gotta walk, you gotta take a couple steps to move forward, right? You're not gonna move forward by standing still, duh. But if God has this plan for you, has this intention for you, it's going to happen. You're the only one getting in your way. Now, Satan is also coming after everybody, wanting to make a mess of everything, but it's not God here and then Satan here and they're playing chess. The best comparison is that Satan's here and the church and angels are here and we're playing chess, and then God's sitting over and he's on our side and he's saying, no, 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 do this. No, do this. And like, he knows the game. He knows the game so well. He knows every single move that Satan is going to make. And he's helping us along at every single step. The deck is stacked against Satan. So stacked, he's going to lose. That's the end of the story. If I read through every single verse till the final verse of Revelation, guess what we'd find out? Satan loses, we win. Well, God wins, but we're on God's team. So we win. But when we compare ourselves to others and compare ourselves to literally Jesus and think, like me right now, I'm making these videos talking about God, talking about the Bible, talking about Jesus, and I could get obsessed with this. Oh, I have a podcast. I have this. I have that. Come watch my stuff. Come watch me. I'm gonna make my videos and stuff like that. I caught myself saying I'm gonna go make my video the other day, and I was like, you know what? It's not my video. That's God's video. I'm gonna go make a video. I'm gonna make a video because it feels weird to say my. Nothing is mine. This is all God's. My money doesn't belong to me. That's God's. Literally God's money. And I am just a humble steward that He allows me to have access to this amount of money and everything else. And yes, I work hard. Yes, I earn that money. But the fact that I'm physically capable of working, the fact that I have the mind that I have, the work ethic that I have, from all the lessons that I have had to learn, that taught me, I got all of that from God. There is not one thing that I have that I could take pride in that I have not gotten from God. Every single thing. Everything. My wife, my dogs, my workout center, my bed, my home, the very breath in my lungs. I can't breathe on my own. I can't do that without God designing the structure of the lungs and the human anatomy. So, glory be to God. Thank you, Jesus, for thinking of lungs and making me a strong and capable person. And if I wasn't strong and capable, I'd be grateful for the fact that I'm alive. Probably not every day, but at least I have my mind. And I like writing. I want to be an author. And if I couldn't work hard every single day, if my legs just got taken out from under me, well, I would pour 110% of myself into writing, because what else could I do? I don't know, I'm sure I'd find something else, but you know, and the fact of the matter is that God designed the human brain to be able to dominate the entire world, regardless of whether or not we're squishy, fleshy, don't have claws, don't have fangs. Like, me versus a lion one on one, that's not a good match. They're going to take me out. But me representing the human race versus the lion ain't got nothing on me. Because you take enough humans, put them together, they'll come out with a rocket. And that lion versus a rocket, yeah. Another pitfall you can fall into when you get into this comparison trap is coveting. These disciples, they're looking over at Jesus' ministry and they're coveting his ministry. They're seeing all these people flock over to him and they're saying, "No, I want that. You shouldn't have that. I should have that." One of the 10 commandments is thou shalt not covet for a reason. It's poison to you. It's poisoning your faith. It's poisoning your trust in God. If you're sitting there saying, they shouldn't have that, I should. God, you got it wrong. You're putting yourself into a place where you can't trust God. You can't trust his plan. If God hasn't given it to you yet, well, trust that it's not good for you to have right now. Trust that it's just not the time. And if God does give it to you, trust that he's given it to you for a reason and that he has a plan and that it's good. A lot of people get the news that they're going to be pregnant and then they start thinking about the abortion clinic when it could be the biggest blessing. Not it could, it would be the biggest blessing of their entire life, and yet they're thinking about their career or this or that or the other thing. And then some people have this opportunity to get a new job, but they don't want to leave their old job. They're scared. They like where they've been working. They're comfortable enough there. They have, friends and everything that's in this job. They're used to it. It's all they've known. They're afraid. They don't want to leave. They don't really even need to leave. It's not even a financial thing. They're doing fine. They're comfortable where they're at. But if they stepped into this new job, who knows the blessings and level of influence they could have over the people there? And who knows? Maybe it would be the most fulfilling job. You know, for the longest time, I wanted to be a landscaper. It's all I wanted to do. When I moved up here, all I wanted to do was landscape. I tried and tried and tried to make a plan, make it work, and everything else like that, and it just didn't. And just yesterday, I was driving around and I saw a landscape crew, and I was heading home, and they had a big area left to do right on the side of the highway with the hot sun beating down on them. And I thought to myself, well, I'm going home. I'm glad I'm not them. I'm glad I'm not with their crew, even if I was making more money, which they probably aren't. We're probably making close enough to the same. Maybe. And again, even if not, is it really worth breaking my body and having the hot sun beat down on me and then not having any time with my wife or my dogs? No. Where I'm at right now? No. It's a bachelor's deal. And I'm not a bachelor anymore. So, cool. I'm glad I never made a landscape business because that would have stolen me away from everything that I'm doing now. And I like where I'm at now. So, John is saying, you bear yourselves. God, that's a weird sentence. Uh, you yourselves, you yourselves bear me witness that I said, I am not the Christ, but I have sent before him or ahead of him. So he's announcing this guy. In this verse, I like this. The one who has the bride is the bridegroom. So, the friend of the bridegroom who stands and hears him rejoices greatly at the bridegroom's voice. Therefore, this joy of mine is now complete. He must increase, and I must decrease. Imagine if you were at a wedding, and you go up. It's their day. It's the couple's day, and you're the friend of the groom. That's who the bridegroom is. He's the groom, the man. And you're looking at him, and he's standing at the altar, and the bride walks down the aisle, and you just see him beaming. He's just so happy, and you're like, wow, that's my guy. That's my bro right there. Like, nice, dude. Like, I'm so happy for you. And then one of your mutual friends in the lineup of the groomsmen says to the bride, "Hey, so what are you doing after this? You want to get a drink? You want to hang out? What's up?" Starts flirting with the bride and starts trying to get all the attention in the middle of the ceremony. That's what it looks like in this situation. That's the comparison that John is making between what the disciples are doing right now with Jesus' ministry. And it's the exact same thing. Jesus is constantly referred to as the bridegroom in parables and in here. Like, the church is the bride and Jesus is the bridegroom. And so if we want to have all the attention drawn to us and not on Jesus, that's essentially flirting with an engaged woman. Not just an engaged woman, that's breaking into the middle of the ceremony and saying, pay attention to me. And the thing about people, the thing about the church, is we're not perfect. We're easily distractible. If you flirt with that bride, she just might pay attention to you. Many things can get your attention away from Jesus, and it's not hard. It's really not hard. And not everything is sin that gets your attention away from Jesus. But it can become sin after a certain point. If you're sitting over here choosing this thing over Jesus, if you have a time of day where you read, a chapter of the Bible or a verse of the or whatever every day, and then you start substituting that for something else, that thing becomes sin. Because what you're doing is you're giving up Jesus for this. You're giving up a diamond to play in the mud. You're giving up love and peace and freedom for anxiety, depression, and confusion and stress. And the confusion is, I wonder why I feel this way. I wonder. Maybe go back to the source of peace. It says, therefore, this joy of mine is now complete. Joy isn't the same as happiness. Happiness is based off of your happening, your happenstance. You can be at the beach and everything's nice and you're happy and everything's cool, and then a group of kids show up and they're screaming and crying and getting all loud and whatever else like that. And now, because the circumstances are different, you're no longer happy. Even though the sun is still shining, the sand has not changed, the the water is still lapping, and everything is the same. It's the exact same as before, plus one new little element. And now they're happy, and you're not. but joy that goes beyond all understanding comes from Jesus. And if you have joy in Jesus, then you can be in that exact same situation. Those kids show up and they're screaming and crying and doing all this stuff and having a blast and doing their thing. And you can look at them and say, wow, I remember when I was doing that. I hope they have a great time. And then their cries and screams of jubilation and whatever hit your ear, and it's not nails on a chalkboard. It's nostalgia. It's wow, thank you, God, that that we live in a place where they can come and have so much fun. It doesn't become nails on a chalkboard, it becomes the laughter of children, which is just what it is. He must increase and I must decrease. When you have a child, do you teach them to lie? When you have a child, do you teach them to be a brat? No, you teach them to be good. That tells you something. When the Psalms say, I was conceived in sin, that goes for all of us. He's not talking about wedlock. He's not talking about a dirty situation or anything. He's talking about just the very fact that ever since Adam sinned, that stained the rest of us all the way down the line. So we all are born sinners. We all come out incredibly selfish. There was that psychology thing where up until like age 6 or 7 or something like that, uh, humans just believe that the world revolves around them. You know, when I was a kid, I thought that my life was literally a VHS tape and that I was the star of the show. And I've talked to multiple other people, and they basically had the same kind of idea until they started to realize, oh wow, other people are like me. Oh, they're not just characters. Oh, they're actually people. Oh, interesting. And that's how we are born. And so we started off. We scream and cry and everything, and you know, ask to be fed and everything else like that because we don't know any better. We just don't. So for people to be left to their own devices, people say against Christianity, they say, "What, you guys really needed a rule book to know not to kill people? Really?" Yeah, actually, yes. Y'all needed a rule book to tell you not to steal? Uh-huh. You know why? Because if no one ever told us, hey, don't do that, that's bad, and then explained to us why that's bad, we would never understand. We would never know that that's bad. We would just do what we felt like doing in the moment. There's a time in the Bible during but before Israel had kings, and they said, there was no kings in that time, and every man did what was right in his own eyes, and the times were wicked. Imagine if there was no government structure, no law, complete anarchy, and everyone did exactly what they wanted to do. It'd be the purge everywhere. It would be scared children, unable to do, a simple thing like go play on the beach. Because they'd be terrified that some people are going to be out there doing whatever they want to do. There would be no freedom. There would only be the bondage and chains of the riotous, wicked people who would reign. It would become survival of the fittest, survival of the cruelest, survival of the coldest hearts. And thank God that that's not the case. I am grateful for my life. I'm grateful for every mistake I've made. I'm grateful for every good thing. I'm grateful for the very breath in my lungs. I heard about this thing when I was doing research for this that I had heard before, and I really like it. When you get to your birthday, you make a gratitude list. Make a gratitude list uh, based off of, and the number of things on that list, make it your age. So if you're 13, write 13 things. I just turned 29 this year, and so I wrote 29 things. And I wish I could have found that list, but I wrote that list out, and some things were as simple as like a good steak, and some things were, my wife. Some things were my able body, you know, the fact that I can feel my thumb and move it around, both of them, even though I've definitely like severely injured both of them, and things are cool. I can still feel crickety crackety in this one a little bit, and maybe when I'm 80, it'll be a problem. But I'm grateful that I'm not 80 and it's not a problem right now, you know. So that's let that be your question of the video. Uh, Instead of a question, a challenge. Go ahead, look at your age, make a gratitude list, and then do that again every single year, every single birthday. Because some people just don't enjoy their birthday. Some people think it's just one more step closer to death. Well, be that as it may, every single day is like that. So either you can live in fear or the shadow of death, or you can live a life full of gratitude and then watch that spread into everything you touch. I feel like I was kind of all over the place, but I got to say everything I wanted to say. And thank you guys. Love you all. See you next time.